In late antiquity, in the deserts of Egypt, a monk goes to his bed for a nice evening of sleep. He said his prayers, he's done his work, but little does he know the nightmare he's about to face. This is Saint Anthony, sometimes referred to as Saint Anthony the Abbot. And every night the demons would come and torment and harass him. Every night the demons would come and he would wrestle with them deep into the night. I think we all kind of know that feeling, don't we? When we're sitting alone in the shadows of the dark, cold night and the demons wander in and all of our hopes fade away and all we have is the fears. Let's talk about wrestling with your demons today as we walk together down creation's path. Hello, everyone. My name is Charlie. I am a Christopagan druid and priest of Bridget.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brian. I'm a Christopagan druid and sous chef to the Dagda.
Today, we're going to be talking not specifically about St. Anthony, though it is his feast day. We're going to use his life as kind of a springboard to what some might call the hour of the wolf, that time of night, sometimes during the day. The darkness seems to be closing in around us, and all of our demons come to bear to tear us down. I think we've all been there at some point in our life, and we're going to talk about how to get through this. Before we get into anything too deep, and before we get into the regular stuff, if this is a regular occurrence for you, it is important to seek out professional help. Well, we're going to talk about various techniques and meditations and whatnot that you can use to help you through these darker moments in your life. It's going to be quite as good as sitting down and talking to a professional one-on-one to help you through your depression and those darker moments of your life. At least tell a friend, but if you can, please seek out professional help. There is a light on the other side, though it may take a long time to get there, and it may take a lot of work, but you'll get there. Trust me. I know. All right, so before we get into this, it's kind of a heavy subject, but I have to say we do 5 original Christopagan and Druid every week. So if you haven't already, please like, subscribe, follow, whatever the terminology happens to be on the app you're listening to us on. You don't want to miss a thing, even when they're kind of serious, like what we're talking about today. Though they're usually a lot more lighthearted. So the demons. First of all, let's get the oogie boogie spooky part over and done with. Do I believe in demons? Yes. I think you do as well.
Oh, yeah. I would say there's definitely 2 distinct categories. The first one is kind of like on the angel side, where it is an energy that arises in that moment for that moment's purpose and kind of dissipates. I think that's the kind of demon that a lot of people run into most often, like with stubbing your toe. All the energies that aligned to have the stubbing of the toe happen is demons. Demystifying that a bit is very helpful. And the other one is more of a spirit that chooses evil, that chooses malice.
I don't want to say, malice might be a better term.
I wanted to go more with malice than evil. I wanted to correct myself on that because it's not, as we said earlier this week, evil is a easy category. A lot of times it's something that has chosen malice, has chosen
to do
hate,
harm,
anger, violence, to do harm. And to add more confusion to everything, there's, that's just the oogie boogie part of it. Because then you also have the psychological and the biochemical side of things. When dealing with all this, there's always the concerns of spiritual psychosis. There's always concerns of depression. Because the thing is since magic is manipulation of subtle energies, if one's biochemistry is in a delicate state, a spirit can manipulate that in a direction because anything can be nudged. A lot of magic is hedging your bets. So when wrestling with demons, some of that could be something exterior influence your interior. Like when you see somebody going into a haunted space and suddenly getting really sick, they ran into a malicious spirit that pushed their biochemistry over the line.
And this is where I feel is very helpful to always just assume we're talking about allegorical demons, because whether or not you're dealing with an actual spiritual entity bothering you or a psychological mess in your own head. And that may not be a helpful phrase, but as somebody who suffers from depression, it just feels like my head gets cluttered. That usually is kind of my first experiences as I'm heading into depression. So I tend to think of it in terms of being messy. So I apologize if that language upsets some people, but because to be frank, yes, you can tell the difference between the two, and it requires a professional to do it. Within the Catholic Church, they actually require you to go through therapy before you can get an exorcism, before you can actually get any kind of spiritual treatment, because they want to make sure that any underlying psychological issues are being dealt with prior to assuming that it's a spiritual issue. And I think that that's a smart way to do it. I think that that is probably the best way to do it. The issue I find, especially in our country, is a lot of us don't have the money. I know for me, a lot of times I haven't had either the money to go into therapy when I needed it, or honestly, one time it was honestly, I needed to sit through a tarantella, which is the most interesting kind of exorcism. It's a musical exorcism that is performed generally by Italian practitioners. It is a specific rhythm that is beat onto, I just lost the name of it. It's a traditional, very large, it's like a tambourine, but it's got a name that is completely escaping me right now. And it is meant to exorcise the little spider that has crawled in and started causing problems. And that was actually what I needed done. That cathartic experience was what I needed. And I feel like when we conflate things, this is where I'm really trying to walk a line here.
This relates to that both and, again, because both it is important to be able to discern what, is an exterior and an interior, and to separate all those things out. And in the grander scheme, it also kind of doesn't matter at the same
It really,
time.
well, I would say
And
in a lot of cases, it doesn't matter because, like we said before, our understanding and practice, we have kind of experienced angels and demons more as kind of an energy that arises and falls, that there is an angelic energy, there is a demonic energy, and that can be generated from a trauma. And you cannot deal with a trauma simply through magical means. You will probably need to go through therapy. I'm not even going to say what kind of therapy, because it's really going to depend on you and how you respond to the different techniques to deal with that. And so in a way, yes, you are experiencing both. If you can find ways to mitigate that excess energy to help mitigate until you can get the help that you need, that is beneficial. I think too many people treat both magic and exorcism like they're cure-all.
yeah,
And
like I waved the magic stick, I said the magic words, splashed the magic water, and there you go, done. It's like, no, not done.
I'm not going to say that never happens. Like, I'm not like, I have seen miracles. I've talked about them on the podcast before. I've seen like 100% miracle happen. They're extremely rare. And if they weren't rare, we wouldn't call them miracle. Usually it's a lot more subtle than that. It's a lot more time intensive than that. But when dealing with this topic, it's really important for us to start realizing where we're actually experiencing this darkness from. In some instances, yes, it could be a psychic attack against you. Dion Fortune, in her wonderful book, Psychic Self-Defense, which is available on the Internet Archive, so you don't have to purchase a copy. I do believe it's out of copyright by now, just entirely worldwide. In her book, she lays out how she was going to therapy, just constantly going to therapy for an issue that would not get better. And a friend of hers was like, I think you're under psychic attack. Actually led her through various practices to put walls up and to protect herself from darker energies coming to bother her. And her issues went away. And that really is like the test. And it's a terrible test in so many ways. But if you do the thing and the bad thing doesn't stop, there's more than likely a psychological underpinning to this that needs to be treated in addition or in place of the magical techniques. And I don't
Well,
think
and to
enough practitioners are open and honest about that.
yeah, because to touch back on one of the main points I feel you were getting to is that this is something you definitely want to have help with. You need a second perspective that helps so much, whether it's a friend or a professional. To remind everyone, because we've talked about this before, there's facts that you can learn about all this. And it doesn't matter how much facts you have until you have those experiences, until you get the wisdom to be able to see the subtle differences in what the different forms of energies are that are at play, especially when dealing with the more boogie side of things. It's incredibly hard to differentiate, to be able to tell. It's like when you go out to a haunting, for instance, being able to tell the difference between the energies of a emotional imprinted area that's just on replay versus an actual spirit that's running around doing things
Or
versus
in air
energies that are created by just people going there, like an spirit constructs, which is a whole other set. Like there's a lot of different energies that can all get confused for a thing. And it takes a lot of wisdom to be able to even start to discern. And even then it's still hard. It's still
and it
difficult to tell it apart.
and it takes a bit of clarity. When you're under any of this, you are probably too close to the situation to be the person to discern. So you really do need to have people in your life that you trust. I would always err on the side of caution of starting with a therapeutic response. I do not think it's helpful to automatically always assume it's demons, it's psychic attack. The nice thing about that is to learn various techniques of, kind of sitting calmly in your breath and imagining a shell of protection around yourself and kind of fortifying, putting your energy into that to keep you safe from anything trying to come get you. That's something you can just do while you're doing something else, right? Getting yourself some holy water that you can then use to bless an area to try to cast out something. Don't go directly to smudging. We did an entire episode on cultural appropriation where we talked about the multiple problems with smudging, not just the cultural appropriation aspect of it, but it's like bringing the nuclear weapons to what might be a knife fight. Like you may be going to a parlay and you brought a nuclear bomb. Smudging should be the last, not the first resort. You are nullifying all of the energy in the area, the good and the bad. So it's definitely not and should not be your first line of defense against these kinds of things. But
Not to mention the biological impacts that the smudging can have on
yes,
the females.
yes, on
Yeah,
it,
you could do all kinds of things.
yes. So just be mindful of that. But that's something that you can do while seeking other kinds of help. And if that makes it go away, I mean, honestly and sincerely, and this is where you have to be very clear-minded with this and why it's really good to maybe do second body practice with somebody where you have somebody that you are sharing what's going on in your mind, all of your sensations. This is where it can be very helpful to be some kind of a relationship where you're getting spiritual advice from somebody who you feel comfortable sharing deep things that are happening in your mind. Because if it is honestly going away just from doing those things, yes, you may be dealing with a spiritual attack. 9 times out of 10, it's psychological, which is why so many people have this idea that demons are much more powerful than they are. It's why people have this idea of this infestation that just won't leave area, or a person that this person is haunted by this demon. That's usually not the case. I've been called in on many of those my life, helping people spiritually. And usually what you find out is an underlying psychological issue or a past trauma that keeps getting triggered, which is causing the issue and not an actual spiritual one. I say this to somebody that I have performed exorcisms, and I only do that at last resort. Exorcism, like like using sage or any other kind of really powerful expellent work be a last resort, not a first resort, because there is much more risk in them than most people consider, but can tell when you made the right decision, when you've hit that moment of last resort of this is what needs to happen, because you see that person's life instantly, permanently change. They were suffering from some kind of an energy or spirit really pressing on them and causing their problems. And once that has been alleviated, they're doing fine now. Their life gets better, their emotions even out, their experience of life improves, their relationships improve, and everything gets back on track. Exorcism is about dealing with unclean spirits, and that is a very immediate change. And again, if you're not experiencing that, it is a psychological issue. You may not know what it is tied to, but it is something that you need to seek professional help from. And sometimes it's just loneliness and isolation, which I think are two of the greatest demons that we have right now. I see videos every now and then of somebody talking about they're suffering under demonic oppression. And if you actually listen to the words that they're saying, they're lonely. They feel isolated. And in that aloneness, all of their worries, all of their doubts, all of their fears come in to haunt them and can feel indistinguishable from an exterior energy because it's an interior energy. And
Well, and this is also where, going back to earlier when I said that both and, where the individual who is suffering from that depression, they can also accidentally create a spirit form manifesting those emotions and those feelings to assault them in some cases. And so it's still from them their own, it's still psychologically based, but now they have an exterior thing. But that's also why it can't be exercised, or any of the other, some of those other things won't even work because it's not a spirit in the other sense. It's more a spirit in a
yeah, it's like a dark
yeah,
service.
it's a dark servitor. That's the word I was looking for. Yeah, they basically accidentally create or unconsciously create a dark servitor that is fed their depression usually, and their job is to feed the worry, the angst, everything that fuels that depression, and it becomes this self-perpetuating system. And once again, a lot of that is resolved from getting the help, getting the therapy, because an exorcism isn't going to really do anything to it. It's spiritual. The traditional spiritual warfare is not like, which also on that front, like, once again, speaking of exorcisms, yeah, that is definitely a last step thing. It's not like in the movies or shows. It's very dangerous for for all the people involved
Yeah,
because
especially
they can really go wrong and compound problems exponentially.
yeah,
Eightfold
there's
to be eightfold to be specific.
and the most common problem that you see that is not dealt with through exorcism is that of like a real, not a TikTok for clout poltergeist, where things are moving around the house. There tends to be things being thrown at people, various other kinds of manifestations like that. The first two questions that need to be asked in any of the situations is one, do you have children? If the answer is yes, are they okay? No, are they really okay?
Are they really
Because
okay?
because 9 times out of 10 they will have a child that is emotionally struggling with something that is causing a manifestation of action in the space, and that will not be taken care of until child is helped. Now, adults can also manifest poltergeist like activity, which I have seen in, again, in my experience with trying to help people with a lot of this. And it's that same issue. There's not a child involved. I have never been to a poltergeist call where somebody asked me to come out and get help with a poltergeist, where it wasn't one of the people that lived in the house experienced some kind of emotional wound or problem, and that was manifesting in the environment. This is one of the reasons why I really do believe in magic. Our minds really are stronger than we give them credit for. And so if you live alone and you're suffering from poltergeist activity, you need a therapist, not an exorcist. because the exorcist is not going to be able to actually deal with this. This is why you see, well, we brought somebody out and they cleansed the space and it was gone for a while and then it came back because, yeah, you nullified, you zeroed out the energy in the space, and it took time for the energy to build back up to the point where it could manifest again. So again, this is it's definitely a spiritual problem, right? You're literally manifesting things flying around the room, things flying off of shelves and what have you. I can only think of one time, I'm racking my brain here, one time out of all the instances I've had to deal with this, where it was not a underlying psychological, but it was actually a genus loci. It was a spirit of the place that did not want them to be there.
Yeah. And once again, when, with experience, you start to understand different types of spirits, and there's different ways of handling that. Like an exorcism just being done on a spirit loci that's probably just going to blow up in everybody's face.
Yeah, it's not going to
Odds
happen.
are it's not going to happen. It's
It
going to
is
be
not going to
bad.
happen. They're
It's
literally
going to cause all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
A genus loci is literally the manifestation of the energy of that area. Unless you're going to remove all of the dirt down to the mantle and start again, then it's still going to be there.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to find some other way to deal with it. And that's what ended up happening in that specific situation that I'm thinking about.
I was going to take us on another quick little side road here. This is one of the things when wrestling with one's demons, when you're looking at treatment, you have both the treatment that's the alleviation of what you're suffering from in the immediate, and then you have treatment for solution, for long-term fix. Like this is going to, we don't talk about things impermanent, which is why I'm not saying a permanent fix, but it is a long-term fix, actually solving the problem. Because most often, and I know at least in the culture we live in, a lot of times people just treat the symptoms and they don't treat the cause. And that's kind of what we're speaking to here. Like if you got poltergeist activity going on, pans flying around the room, that's a symptom. And so a lot of times people want to just try to treat that. And if the cause is somebody suffering from deep emotional, the actual solution is like you can bring some peace to the area as a temporary fix, so no one has to worry about getting winged by a pan and stuff being broken. But the actual fix, the actual solution, of course, is getting that treatment, which therapy and other things can really work for that, bringing actual peace to the person. Because that's the thing is, we've been told if you have the faith of a mustard seed, you can tell a mountain to move. So a pan is infinitesimally smaller than a mountain. So it takes so much less faith to chuck a pan across a room. Like, just to put it in that context, like how much smaller is that amount of faith? Like when people think like, well, that's not possible at all. It's like, well, when that doubt's removed, when you're working in the unconscious, a lot of that doubt's not there anymore. And it's a lot easier
And
to have happen.
I've given a lot of thought to the story of Saint Anthony and what was he actually up against? Were actual demons coming to haunt in the middle of the night? Was he actually under some form of demonic attack? And the more I read the stories, the more I'm convinced that the answer is yes, that he created all of them, that they were all self-created demons because they were demons of wrath, of lust, of various things that he had deemed things that he needed to expel from himself, which means he pushed them from his conscious into his shadow self. The longer you push something into that repressed shadow state, the more energy that you give that repression, the more likely you are to spin it off into, like we're calling it, a dark servitor. Because a servitor is just a partition of your own psyche that has been granted permission to act without consulting the primary consciousness. That's in a nutshell, like oversimplifying servitor magic. That's basically what you're doing. You're sectioning off a part of your own energy and psyche and saying, you are going to do this, and you don't need to check in with me. Just do this, and here's the terms for how we're going to do that. And we're repressing when you look at the way Anthony was living his life and the major changes he was trying to make to himself in such a quick period of time, truly believe that he pressed his own urges and instincts so strongly that they were able to manifest as separate energies harass him, that he made his own demons. And the only way to deal with that kind of an infestation is through reintegrating everything back into your psyche, not doing that again.
Also, the story can be a great example of where the problems in exorcism, because if you think about it, if you've already gone through the steps of repressing all this negative energy and separating it, and then you want to banish it from yourself, you have now just spun it out into a manifestation
Yeah.
outside of you, but its focus is still you. You are still connected. And this is why the biggest solution to all of it is living in right relationship. That's why we're always talking about living in right relationship. You got to live in right relationship with yourself. You got to live in right relationship with your environment and with the others in your environment, because in the end, that is what will bring peace. And peace is what brings long-term solutions
And it's always so
to all of
important.
it.
And it's always important to remember you are one of those things in your environment, because people forget that that includes themselves. So I hope that this has been some help for you. We've talked a lot about evil and the ways to treat evil. And we saw with St. Anthony's feast day coming up that it might be interesting to add this layer in, because I think demons are very misunderstood, and they're misunderstood because either through the propaganda of the church that's trying to use them to scare people and control them, or through media that's trying to use them to scare people for thrills, that there's a lot of misinformation out there. Start with therapy. Always start with therapy. It generally will actually fix the problems. But as long as it's not working against what you're doing in therapy, it does no harm to work on setting up psychic shields and all of the other things, just in case it is an external attack, because it is sometimes
Well,
it is. But
as I like to say with my folksy wisdom, this is where you're setting up your sacred spaces. When you go to clean up your house, you don't exorcise everything from your house, casting it out onto the front lawn. That's not how you clean your house. You actually create your sacred space and you clean it properly, which means
yep.
getting in there and putting everything in right relationship with the environment, because you can't rebuke the couch to dust it.
So that would
If you're
be
successful, it's
lovely.
to go flying out into the front lawn. Yeah, that'd be lovely, but
Dust bunnies, I rebuke thee. It would be wonderful. And they'd all just like, okay, fine, and
yeah,
marched out of the house. Like,
that's entertainment and high fantasy fiction, which is wonderfully fun. Even Mickey Mouse got in trouble with that one.
That's like a super evangelical Studio Ghibli movie.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope that this has been helpful. I hope it helps you to understand a little bit better some of these ideas that are floating around out there. And I get it. Most of the time we say that, experiences may differ. This is one of those things that if you talk to any practitioner who's really been doing the work, like really been putting the work in long enough, we will all tell you the same thing. Seek therapy first. That usually fixes the problem. And if not, we can go to other things after that. If this has helped you, let me know what you think. Do you believe in demons? Do you believe demons are energies, or demons just thought forms, metaphors? Because I think all of those answers are equally valid personally. But let me know what you think down in the comments. If you're listening to us on YouTube or Spotify, you can leave a comment right there. If you're listening to us anywhere else, even if they say that you can leave a comment, they won't let us know. So leave a comment there anyway, because engagement is magic. And then head over to creationpaths.com and click on chat. You can leave a comment there, and we will see it and be able to respond to you. While you're there, if you happen to have a few dollars you can pass our way, we offer monthly and annual memberships over there. And we recently got the ability to do live streams over there. And we're looking at ways to play around with that somewhat. So another thing you can put into the comments, if there's a certain kind of live stream you would like from us, let us know. That might be something we'd be interested in doing. If you'd like to support us somewhere else, you can support me on Patreon and Ko-fi. I am C. Dorset on both. Ko-fi allows for one-time donations. If you don't have any money right now, or you're not sure where the kind of people you want to give your hard-earned treasure to, I completely understand that. But if we have helped you out with this or any of our episodes, please share it with others so that we can spread the word and help more people out, because that is really why we do this. Until next time, Saint Raphael, Archangel of Healing, who famously expelled Asmodeus by trapping him in a fish liver and throwing him into the desert, be with us and help us to healing our bodies, our minds, and our spirits, so that we may find a life of joy and wonder as we walk together through this world. Amen.
Amen.